Hello, welcome to another Ready and Raw video. Today, I thought I'd continue on the TTRPG reviews train, um, but do something very weird actually for this one. Um, Something that's not even produced and released by, at least released by in this part of the globe, by your usual TTRPG producers, and that is the Konosuba TTRPG, which is um, created and adapted by FIA, which I believe is the Far Eastern. Um, it's something. Far, Far Eastern Amusement Research. That's the one. And published in the West, so US, Europe, probably also Australia, by Yen Press slash Yenon. Um, so yeah, this book is interesting. But before I get into talking about why this book is interesting, if you want more TTRPG reviews, more gameplay, and other stuff, I do have other stuff that I want to make and do, and might drag some people on to do some stuff as well. If you want more of that, click subscribe, and then any time that we do post something, it'll be there waiting for you to watch. Um, Before we go in, I'm going to be showing off my nails as I wave this thing around. They're a fucking state. Um, so yeah, the Konosuba TTRPG, or as most adaptations I've seen for anime, the Goblin Slayer one does it. It only uses one T, which is interesting. At least most people I talk to about tabletop role playing games, when you abbreviate it, you use both T's, whereas there's only one. I guess it makes sense, um, but it was just a weird thing that I noticed. But onto the book itself. It's, as you can probably already tell, it's a softcover book, which roughly conforms to the stylings of most manga. Which, if you've got a little shelf space, that is quite nice. So that's not going to be an issue if that's a problem for you. It's also quite interesting in terms of how they format these books, because you know if you've been playing tabletop role playing games for any amount of time, most of the books you'll see, you know, over in US, UK, Europe territories, they're going to be much more chunky hardback affairs. Some of them will range in size. Um, some of them will be closer to this sort of size book, but almost always hardback. And at least the big fish, at least the big fish, are going to be this sort of more. I think this is bigger than A4, but this sort of sized, often hardback book, unless you get a pocket edition or something like that, or some obviously some indie creators will publish their physical products as zines, in which case you're going to get a much smaller page count than even this, and it's going to be hardback and stapled together, which is cool. I do want to get more zines in my life because it's such a cool way of presenting an RPG, especially a rules light RPG. But yeah, back to this book. It is, if you've never seen a book a TTRPG presented in this style. It's weird, and there are bits in this where I'm like, this just it's a thing. Like the for a start, the first 90 pages. Let's double check. The first, yeah, 90. Uh, yeah, 84. Okay. The first 84 pages are what is called a replay. So if you're you might be used to in a lot of TTRPGs and a lot of war games of games having examples of play, just maybe a turn or two, an example of how combat works, things like that. This this is a full, basically short story that goes through an entire quest from the players who are the original creator of Konosuba and a couple of their friends. I think there's some names that you might recognize that I can't remember off the top of my head. But it is basically a full playthrough of a TTRPG session, which I think that's really really cool. Is it necessary for most games like D&D and Starfinder and even smaller relatively games like Morgborg? Not really, not especially in this part of the world where we are, because I think mostly of the prevalence of actual play series, much like our own, and Critical Role and things like that. You don't really need that, and even then, I think there's a lot of playtesting that goes on to make sure that rules are fairly clearly written out. Whereas the rules are they're written out and they're mostly clear, but there's bits where you're just like, how does that work? So reading through this, I've had to do a bit of Google foo across different sections just to understand what's going on, because I don't even know that it's poorly written out. I know the PDF is. The PDF is awful. The PDF is just awful. And this book has its moments. There are definitely typos and inaccuracies. If I can find them, I will put them as a pinned comment, so you'll know what to look for. Because this book has been obviously translated from Japanese to English and probably other languages, and there's some moments where it just doesn't read too well. Again, especially the PDF version, which is effectively just a plain text document with a couple low res scans of the odd bit of the book that need illustrating, like the character sheet description and things like that. Everything else is just a plain basic Word document, which I don't know how much the PDF went for. I found it through other means, but as you can see, this is £16. I imagine. Yeah, it says here 20 US. So let's say $10 for the PDF. I would not have paid $10 for a PDF that looked like that did. It was bad. Um, kind of comical, I will say, because some of the translations were, I assume, very literate. Like there's a section where you can roll roll in a table for your character's origin based on what uh, race you've chosen, and one of them for the reincarnated person, so a person who has died in what is effectively our world and woken up in a weird black void in a, I think the book literally says, very simple chair. One of the options is a gunshot, but in the PDF, it seems to have been very literally translated from Japanese to English as gun clap. And I find that hilarious. That is very silly and I love it. Um, but there's other moments in that that aren't so comical. Like, just bits being missing from quite important descriptions, like not entire sections, just words and letters that you just think that could have done with an extra proofread from one or two more people to go, okay, that looks good, send it out. And even then, with the quality of the PDF being literally just some poor sap's written this entire book out in a Word document, it's not great. Not great for 10 quid, if it was 10 quid to begin with. But beyond the PDF, because this isn't a PDF review, this is a book review. Um, the book is good, the art's good, the descriptions. Well, I think some of them could do with uh, a little bit more on them, and the font is awful. Um, I'm sure if you've got eyes that work nice and good, you've got good 2020 vision, this is fine for you. And I'm not saying every company should, you know, be thinking about the 0.001% of their player base that is fucking blind and be making a nice big font books for their TTRPGs. Though I would love to see more TTRPGs do that, I will be honest. But that's small. I think even for some people who probably do have good vision, that is small. And the only reason why I can just about read it is, thankfully, just because of the nature of this book's formatting and its presentation. There's no like contrasting colors like there would be for, say, Morkborg or Cyborg, where the font is a good size, but the colors, the colors are all over the place. Um, but yeah, it's an interesting system too, because it's a 2d6 system where, as the name might suggest, if you're not used to TTRPG jargon, you take two six-sided dice and you roll them, adding on to your results whatever modifiers your character sheet might have, which is interesting because it's not a system that I think I've come across before. Though from the little research I've done, it does seem to be quite a popular sort of dice rolling mechanic for TTRPGs over in Asia. So yeah, like it's fairly elegant and simple in principle, and also, despite how simple it is as a game system, character creation is quite in depth. I wouldn't say it's quite as in depth as, say, Cyberpunk or Call of Cthulhu, but it's more in depth than I maybe want for a first TTRPG, or for maybe someone who's played a little bit of D&D might be able to grasp this. But yeah, it's a very interesting beast in terms of other RPGs, because it's at least for my pasty ass Western experience, it is nothing like I've read ever, which is I like it. I like it when I come across games that go, hey, here's this thing that looks like a thing that you know and love, but it's different, and I love that. But yeah, we briefly touched on the races, and there are three of them, so not many. And those are, as mentioned, reincarnated person, someone from the real world who died and is now being reincarnated into this wacky comedy fantasy world. You've got native inhabitant, which mostly just describes humans, but the book does say can cover dwarves and elves and other humanoid races that can be found in the world of Konosuba, which I think is fine. I think having separate information for those other races would have been preferred, at least for me. I would have preferred to have different stat blocks for humans, elves, and dwarves of that are native to this land. I think that would have been nice. But I think that's just more of a gripe that I have than a real thing that makes me go, no, this is bad. And finally, you've got the Crimson Mage clan, which are humans with crimson eyes who are sort of genetically have a genetic sort of skill for magic and that sort of thing, which I think is cool. And as for classes, you do get quite a bit more in terms of classes, not least because you've got basic classes that will take you from your base level 1 to 10, and then you've got more advanced classes. So I think even though the races are quite simple, more of the nuance comes with the classes and the skills those classes have, because each class has a good amount of skills that you can take at level 1. And that's quite cool. Right down to some comedy bits, because yeah, if you're not aware of Konosuba, it is inherently a comedy anime, and the game does its best to try and help you lean into that as much as you are as much as you are willing to go, which to me, I think if you're playing this game, you should just go in as far as you can. Like, I think if you wanted to play a straight faced TTRPG, just play D&D or any of the other hundreds, possibly of possibly even thousands of fantasy TTRPGs, and just play it straight. Whereas this game gives you all the tools to do that, including a lot of equipment, damage, things like that. And while I'm talking about equipment and spells, the way, again, going back on the layout, is really interesting. Like, all of your sort of skills, and I think this is the spells. So you've got fire, lightning, things like that. It's all laid out in a way that you could photocopy this, laminate it, and make sort of cards out of them if you wanted, which I think is a really cool, interesting way of doing it. Um, like it's definitely something that I'm not used to. Like normally, obviously with D&D and Starfinder, you'd have all your spells, what they do, and they'd just be listed across however many pages they're listed on. Whereas this, it's almost encouraging you to once you've chosen your character to photocopy the pages of this book, obviously for your own use, um, and use them as quick reference cards, which I think is really nice. I think it saves on having to do that as a separate product at a later date, for one thing, and it's just a nice little extra. Though going back to the whole comedy nature of this game, one of its real sort of selling points as an RPG and as an adaptation of this world for me is the cheats system, which the cheats work much like cheats in video games, except there are drawbacks. So yeah, which I think add to the chaotic comedy of this game's world. So one of them, like the most of them, do sort of, yeah, especially the first four, very much riff on the four main protagonists of the anime, which that's to be expected and is very fun to riff on. And there's information on the protagonists of the anime in this book to use as NPCs if you so wished, or if you wanted to, you can use the base stats of the quick start characters, roll up your own origins, give them a name, and basically roleplay as the protagonists themselves. So I don't know why you'd want to do that. It's a big fantasy world, but anyway, the cheat system, it's funny because what it basically does is it makes your character super overpowered at a silly cost. So to go on the pursuit of power cheat. So the merit, yeah, you've got a description of what it is and what it does. A merit, so a bonus, a good thing about taking this cheat, and a demerit. You know, interesting choice of words. Like it works. It's just very. I don't know how you describe that because they're the right words. It's dry. It's very it's very dry wording. But I'd say that's sort of the case with most of the rules section of this. Like there's even with the spell descriptions, there's no real fluff on how to describe the spells in universe, and I'll go into the in universe description as well in a bit. But back to the cheats. So description, I'll just read the pursuit of power is influenced with infatuated with bolstering your magic powers, and you devote yourself wholly to that pursuit. So basically, give me the power, and what that cheat will do is you will add 5d6 to the chosen skill effect. And if you're at least 10th level, add character level um, divided by 2d, or is it times by 2d6 instead. So basically, whatever ability you're trying to use, it catapults the damage dice into orbit. However, if you use this cheat, you immediately, after the result is dealt, you immediately hit 0 hit points and you are KO'd. Which, if you've seen Konosuba as a series, that mirrors one of the characters, and there's nothing like it for the four main protagonists. So I think that's a really fun system. I don't know how much I'd enjoy the whole system of basically having one attack and then nothing. Though I guess it would be something to pull out as a last ditch, or just because, yeah, why not? I think this is almost the end of the fight. So yeah, it's a really cool system that it's the main reason why this game really attracted me. I was like, that's cool and that's fun. I really want to see how that works in game. And I think it's one of the main sort of selling points to the game, because beyond its name recognition, it's not got much else. It's very very much cookie cutter, which kind of sucks. I can fully understand why, because Konosuba in itself is deliberately kind of just a generic fantasy world. So I can fully understand why the world building doesn't go much past the characters, because Konosuba as a franchise is very, very much about the characters in the world rather than the world around it. Because the world around it is every other European fantasy setting you've ever seen, and that is by design. Should be expressed, but there's not a lot there, and there's a brief scenario for you to go through, for you to play through. But beyond that, there's not much in terms of world building, or there's a few. There's a little bestiary in here to use, but a lot of it in terms of world building and GMing, it does leave up to you as the GM and the rest of the players of the game to figure out and understand. Which is why when it comes to concluding this video and saying would I recommend this to people, unless you are a fan of the anime, I wouldn't recommend this. Mostly because it's just a weird book to get your hands on. It's got its flaws in terms of the editing and the production value, mostly in the PDF. But again, there's stuff here. If all you can get your hands on is the PDF, I have found a couple places that have sort of attempted to go, hey, here's what's wrong with these, with the PDF. And I will find those and put those in the comments if I can remember. But yeah, if you are a fan of Konosuba and you want a comedy RPG, yeah, go for it. Give it a shot. I think it'll be fun. However, I think it would be just as easy to plant the cheat system into your current RPG also. And also, the creatures are quite simple. The few creatures that it does give you are also quite simple. So it's, yeah. If you're kind of super fan already, give it a shot. Why not? You know, it's a world you enjoy with a rule set to boot, and it's cheap compared to a lot of RPGs out there. You know, given the size and shape of it, it's 16. This book was 16 quid compared to the 40 or 50 quid these things cost. It's not bad. It's not bad if you are just looking for something to try on a random, if you've got a spare day free, your usual D&D session couldn't go ahead. Maybe this is a good one for you, especially if you can get the quick start characters going. Like it's doable as someone who's not a fan of the anime, because most of the game's aesthetic is just generic fantasy comedy. Most of the anime aesthetic comes from the fact that it's already based on an anime anyway. You could easily strip all of that back and just play it as a comedy fantasy, which I think works for people who might not be fans of anime or this anime in particular, which I think is nice. But again, I've enjoyed reading it, and I really really want to play it. And if I do play it, I'll get back to you with what I thought of the gameplay. But yeah, if unless you're invested in the franchise, give it a miss. Or if it's on sale, maybe pick it up then, because it's already cheap. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please once again do hit like and subscribe, because I'm enjoying making content at the moment, especially around TTRPGs and Warhammer and stuff like that. Saturday we're going to be recording Starfinder episode 4. Though that would probably be up for months because I haven't even finished editing episode 3. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that also. And I've also got other things that I want to edit and get out to you, as well as more RPG reviews. I want to make this a fairly regular thing of looking at RPGs and different tabletop game books and going, hey, should you play them? Especially if they are off the beaten path, if they aren't, your Warhammers or D&Ds. So yeah, if that's your sort of thing, I really hope you stick around, because that's what we're going to be doing. I've already explained that. So yeah, thanks for watching, and take care of yourselves. See ya.